All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and Simul Radio and Simul TV. If you would like to give me a call, usually we accept calls at 1-800-610-7035. But for this month, the month of October, we're not taking any calls because I am going to be doing one-on-one interviews with our guests. And we've had guests from Canada, the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, talking about the paranormal, ghosts, goblins, things that go bump in the night, because October is Halloween month here in the X Zone. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And like I said, you can check out the broadcast schedule for the X Zone Radio TV show at xzbn.net, and for the X Zone Radio TV show itself, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is in the state of New Jersey. His name is Barry Ruggiero, and Barry and his brother, I believe, first started the paranormal group called Ruggiero New Jersey Paranormal. And after 2 years, they changed it to New Jersey Paranormal. Joining me now is Barry Ruggiero. And Barry, welcome to the X Zone. Thanks very much for joining us, and happy Halloween.
Thank you. Happy Halloween to you, too. And now I'm actually with New Jersey Paranormal Investigations, which is just my group, with a couple of other people.
So, Barry, what was it that brought you into the world of the paranormal? Why did you decide to go out there, dedicate as much time as you can trying to solve the unsolved mysteries that are out there in the paranormal?
Well, part of it is just what you said, trying to solve the unsolved mysteries. For me, my first encounter, or first story I ever heard about the paranormal was from my mother. And my mother, we were an Italian-American family in New Jersey, typical what you see. My mother was very much a concrete, you have to feel it, time and distance type of person. Yeah. There was no nonsense. And she would tell me the story that when her mother passed away, which was my grandmother, about when she was in an orphanage, and my family has a history of brain tumors. It's a carcinoma that they carry. It's in the gene. I never had it, thank God, but my brother does. So my grandmother had it, her mother, and back in the 40s, brain surgery was much different than it is now. You literally went on a table, and it was a 50-50 chance that you were going to live or die. So my grandfather at that time, my grandmother was sick, so my grandfather put everybody in the orphanage. Unfortunately, my grandmother passed away when she was under having the operation. When she was under, my aunt and my uncle, who were older, found out more about it. My mother's story is that she was laying in bed, and all of a sudden, a nun in white came up to her and pointed to a pitcher of water that was off to the side. So my mother automatically got out of the bed. She was like 4 or 5 years old, and just went over, got the glass of water, and on her way back either slipped or the glass fell out of her hand because it was dark. And the woman just looked at her. The nuns heard the glass. They came out, lights went on. The kids slept in basically a dormitory setting. And the nuns didn't see anything. They said, what happened? And they just contributed to sleepwalking. And they, get back in bed, everybody go back to sleep. My mother was then with my aunt and my uncle, because they were all in the same orphanage. And like a couple of weeks later, she was describing what happened to her, and she described the woman, that she was all in white with a white veil. And if anybody knows anything about nuns, they wear black. When I was younger, they used to wear black with a black veil with a little white. And at night, I doubt if a nun would be in a nun's outfit. I'd imagine her hair would be back maybe in an old nightgown. So my mother described the woman as she had a white long dress on with a white veil, and told them description of what she thought she saw. And my uncle and my aunt, her brother and sister, said that's what Mama looked like after the surgery to cover up the scar on her head.
Oh, for God's sake.
When she died. They put her in white, and they put the white veil to hide where the brain surgery was. They didn't take her to the funeral or anything because they felt she was too young. And she stayed there, but the older ones did go. So she would tell me that story. Then my aunt would tell me the same story from her viewpoint. And I grew up with that. So that was probably my first, I believe my mother. I think there's something beyond this.
Yeah.
Why would my mother wouldn't lie to me? And I got to be honest, for years I didn't look into it. And then I think it was on the Discovery Channel. Dave Juliano was on talking about ghost hunting. And I was reading a little bit of Lord Auerbach and UCLA and Orion Institute and how they were doing things. And Lord Auerbach was the first one that really started to use tri-field meters and other things. And Dave Juliano carried that on, but he also was a demonologist. And the good thing was he was in New Jersey. So at that time, just reading, I figured, let me approach him. And I talked to my brother, and he worked for Johnson & Johnson at that time. And he would travel through a tri-state area. So he said, I go out to Gettysburg. You got to come out there. There's these white balls. You might smell gunpowder. And I'm telling you, I've heard voices. So it's all right, let's go out there. And I actually that was where I had my first paranormal experience. I was literally on the field, and I don't know if you've ever been to Gettysburg.
Yes, I have, yeah.
Okay, so you know how they have the monuments of what regiment was where and all that, and so you could visualize on the field. Well, I was at one monument, and to the left of me was a horse trail going down. So we parked our car, and we were all up there. My brother, my niece, and I, and her boyfriend at that time were all up there. My brother goes, I'm going to walk off this way. And I said, I'm going to go down this trail. I mean, it was a wide enough trail. And I'm walking down, and my niece and her boyfriend were just at the monument with the flashlight. And I go down the trail, and I distinctly hear in my left ear a faint, it sounded far away but close at the same time. Something went, hey, just whispered, hey. And I froze. I didn't expect it, nothing. And at that time, I bought a cheap Gauss meter that you maybe saw on the Hornet Collector, and it does no bells and whistles, just has a needle that goes up if the EMF goes up. So I'm holding this thing, and the EMF starts going up. So I just stood there, and I say to Sarah, "Because come down here, look, something happened." I'm in more of a panic than anything else, and I'm frozen. They come down, and I tell them what I just told you, and my niece goes, "Give me the gauge. Give me the gauge." So she takes the gauge, and we're both standing there, and she goes, "Is there anybody here?" And the thing goes off again. So then she goes, "Okay, could you get away from me now?" It stops. She goes, "Could you do it again?" And it did it again real quick. And then we heard a knock on a tree branch or a trunk. Now, you could say that was the woods, but for us, it was enough to leave and go back up to the car and just wait for my brother. So that started me. Then I started reading. I contacted Dave Juliano. And, of course, he was like, "You're a newbie. I'm not teaching you anything." Oh. And this Ghost Hunters just came out, I think, right about that time or about 6 months after. And he's like, "Look, you got to be dedicated to this stuff." So I continued reading, and I went to a few of his classes. And then finally he said, "Okay, I'll tell you." And he had, of course, some literature. I read his literature, David Browntree, and then I started looking into it. And my brother said, "Gee, we to do something together, we ought to do this." And we should look into it. And Dave was guiding me like more of a paranormal researcher. And also, because he was a demonologist, he was telling me, these are things you shouldn't do. If you see this ever, contact me. And so we started Ruggiero Paranormal. And the funny thing was, it was just my brother and I and my niece, and we couldn't figure out why we couldn't get any members. And we realized it's because the family name was in front of it. So we dropped our ego and dropped the last name and became New Jersey Paranormal. And that continued on for about eight years. And through that time, we had private cases and we did some public events.
Mm-hmm.
And him and I had a little bit of a falling out. And then I did solo investigations for 1 year. I said, I was with a group. I've experienced things with teams, but I've never made myself vulnerable like the homeowner that calls me is. They don't have 4 people with a black shirt on and all kinds of gadgets. They sit there and they say, I heard something. I felt something out of the corner of my eye. I thought I saw somebody walk by. So different for me. For 1 year, I just went out on private investigations, felt comfortable in my knowledge of what to do, and I went out and tried to experience that isolation, that person being alone, sitting in your bedroom and having experiences. And the thing that's odd about this, paranormal, I don't look for Bigfoot. I don't, I believe in all that stuff, but that's not my forte. I focused on one area and one area only. I've experienced so many things over the years that although I try to apply physics and logic to it, at the end of the day, most of my wildest experiences were personal and came to no logical answer other than it had to be something paranormal.
Sure. You mentioned that you had one forte, and what is your forte?
I believe that I believe basically and you'll hear it more now than you ever have in Einstein's theory that everything is nature,
mm-hmm.
That everything is energy. And everything's, if you break it down to the atom, then it's molecules, and you come up with neutrons, electrons, and protons.
Yeah.
So that that when we lose our organic generator, our body, that our subconscious or our spirit is some type of energy, either on a lower frequency or a frequency we haven't discovered yet. And so what I do is apply physics
mm-hmm.
using Einstein's theory. And in space-time that, the present doesn't really exist. It's fake. There really is no beginning or end. If you could travel at the speed of light, you wouldn't have that. You'd be able to look at different points in your life. So I do believe that all energy is a form of light. So we're our subconscious, why we love somebody, whether you want to call it a soul
mm-hmm.
or anything like that, is a form of intelligent energy. And once it's no longer in the physical body, if a haunting or something came, it just means like all matter is a series of vibrations of energy. The denser the matter, the heavier the vibration. The lighter it is, it's more like a microwave thing. So I think we're on this high frequency. And as we slow this frequency down, one, you would disturb the natural EMF field around you. So K2 meters, REM pods would go off. So that would be one way for me to calculate to see, can I measure a haunting is really what, like ghost hunters and all them, if you really believe the equipment doesn't find a ghost for you. What you're trying to do is validate a haunting and saying, I have some proof here that I could dispute with a physics professor at a university and say, okay, the fuses were off, no cell phones were on,
mm-hmm.
none of this. And at this time of night, in this area, I get this type of an EMF.
All right, stand by. You and I have to take our first break. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Barry Ruggiero, and he is with the New Jersey Paranormal Investigations. We'll talk more to this very interesting gentleman and his theories when we return from this commercial break. After all, this is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're talking to Barry, who is the founder of New Jersey Paranormal Investigations. And if you'd like to find out more about them, visit their website, www.newjerseyparanormalinvestigations.com. All right, Barry, let's say somebody gives you a call and they say, Barry, I think there's something weird, strange, bizarre going on in my house. I heard about you on the X Zone. I live in New Jersey. Can you help me? What do you and your team do from the moment you get that call?
All right. So the first thing we usually do is just to ease everybody into it and describe who we are. We're not, we're not demonologists. We're not going to come in all the nifty black shirts like you see on TV. We are researchers. We're normal, everyday people that have daytime jobs, just like them. In other words, I am you, but I do this. I research this. Then we do, once they give us what they've experienced, depending on the range, but usually in every case now we ask them, have they ever had any psychological problems? Did their family ever have psychiatric problems? Tell them, we're going to ask you some personal stuff. We ask, if we were to come there, can we look in your medicine cabinet? And you'll do that actually if they grant us to come in, and we'll do a face-to-face interview if it gets to that point. But the initial one is really, there's a lot of people, believe it or not, that just want to live in a haunted house just for the attention. And then there are people that watch these TV shows and they think they have a demon. And, it's wrong if I say to somebody who has mental issues, whether it be, depression or anything, that if I feed into your fear and tell you it's a demon, the next thing happens, they go, you know what, there's been 5 groups, no one can get rid of the demon, because really what you need is professional help, not my help. So I will do that with people. I'll screen them like that, but you always have to be polite because I don't want to offend anybody.
Of course.
I'll ask them, have they had any traumatic experiences in their life that they remember through the time and it still bothers them? What time frame did it happen? Did it happen when you moved in this house? Has it always happened? What do you feel? What kind of experiences? Because if someone tells me that, I've had this throughout my childhood and now in the house it's really bad, well, yeah, you could be a psychic or you could have personal problems that you just need help with. So if I'm feeding you the wrong information and saying, let me come out and I'll give you some holy water and throw it on the door, I'm doing you a disservice, not a service. But usually when people check all that, and believe it or not, we get some people that have emotional issues, and that's just part of, everyday life for everybody, especially with COVID now.
Yeah.
But then we get a person like you or somebody, a guy who says, you know what, during the day I work at a toll booth in the New Jersey Parkway, and I moved into this house, and I got to tell you, at night, my coffee cup keeps moving. I keep hearing somebody walking around. So then we have to go in, and what we'll do is actually set up a piece of graph paper, and you do a floor plan. And then after you do the floor plan, you will actually look for those hot spots. I know those high EMF fields. It's that, did the chicken or the egg come first? If there's a plug there, are you sensitive to high EMF fields, or is that feeding something energy? And also it helps us with, we're not talking to a plug for 5 hours thinking we have a ghost, which is what I teach most people, because they'll get a K2 meter, and I've had this at events, and I hate to burst a bubble, but the K2's flickering, like, oh my God, it's something. And I go, your friend next to you has a cell phone not on airplane mode, and it's picking up the cell phone signal.
Right.
It's nothing more. And a lot of times in regular investigations, sometimes my TV went off. Well, maybe your neighbor or somebody else has the same remote you do downstairs. It's not always a ghost. Mm-hmm. And I look for logical explanations. But the first part is the screening process of asking you a series of questions, then with an interview. Then after the interview, if we feel you really do have something going on in your house that either you can't explain or can't be explained, that's when we'll do an investigation.
Okay, so you do all your prep, you do all the baseline tests for your equipment, and you check out the electric. You do the history of the house as best you can based on municipal records. You do the search through the newspapers and so on.
Right.
You're convinced, and your team is convinced that something paranormal might be there, because everything that you've done has.
Right.
So how do you proceed then?
Well, so here's the big secret to all paranormal activity. Although on TV it looks great for a guy to walk around with a giant cross or something like that, it really comes down to, again, I believe in energy, and if you believe in feng shui or any of those things, the secret, and I'm not preaching to anybody to do that, but what I am saying is we all remember when we were kids, and there were dominant kids or bullies, and there were shy kids. So if you're an introvert and you're outside somewhere, naturally an extrovert's going to push you a little bit further, a bully or somebody, because you're not standing your ground. And it's an energy you're giving off, and he or she's giving off that energy of, look, even if they're afraid that they're going to be the one later on. And it's the same in a haunted house. Either somebody lived there, or a family member is next to you, or something's haunting there. But reality is the best trick it has is you can't see it. So if I tap on a window, or your fear level goes so high that your world keeps getting smaller and smaller, and this entity takes over more and more of it. And it's basically not taking your energy, but it's dominating your life. And if it wants that place, what it's basically saying to you is, I don't want you here. This is mine. And I'm going to get you out of here, or you're going to submit and live under my rules. And I teach people that, whether it be, if I told you to say you're a Catholic, and I say, okay, use 4 Hail Marys at night and light a cross, put a cross next to your bed, what I'm really doing is empowering you. That's it. It's not that it's divine intervention, because if you're Jewish, I go, well, do you have a Star of David? Read from the Torah. Or if you're a Muslim, I'm going to tell you, and it's not about the religion. I can't tell you, well, this religion's right and the other ones are wrong. So believe me, all the spirits and demons, if you're not Catholic, you're really in trouble here. It's about your belief mechanisms, about your own power. That's where Ghost Hunter softens it, where they say, well, we'll teach you how to live with it. There is a truth to that. I find more, first off, I find less really bad hauntings. And it's, all right, how do you coexist with something that may be in this house? And obviously, if you're going to be here for the next 10 years, it's probably not going to go away, but you can make it less than what it needs to be. It's like that tag on your shirt irritating you. Well, you can keep working at it and say, it's really bothering me, or you can start to ignore it a little bit. And eventually it'll smooth off. And for a lot of families, whether you're doing sage and you're telling everyone to cleanse the house, all I'm doing is giving you personal tools to say, you can now be the captain of your own environment. This thing here will not be. And gradually your energy will take over this place and give it less room to manipulate in.
All right, so basically, what is a ghost? Why do they haunt? Why don't they just take off? If everything is energy, once the human body is dead and the energy is released, why does it want to stay? Why doesn't it want to venture?
So what I personally believe is that if you read Einstein about space-time, and that, if you're looking from a viewpoint down, you could see your entire life if you're at the speed of light. I didn't die and come back and say, hey, Rob, I'm here now. Let me tell you what we do on the other side. So, it's just theories or speculations over years of investigating. I would imagine that if you or I were not here anymore, and if we were able, like our memories, but actually be able to go back to a vibration of that time and go back there, but we're in a current physical situation, because that time, it does exist, but on a different plane. But if we slow down our vibration, we would be maybe if you met your wife at a place, or your first baby was born and you brought her home to that certain house. So you may actually be going back to a memory, but the person living there now says it's a haunting. You know,
so basically what you're saying, it's some sort of vibrational time travel.
Yes. I firmly believe, and I don't know if you ever saw that movie, Matthew McConaughey, Interstellar, where they thought the library was haunted, and then he goes into the wormhole, and if he's in there for more than 15 seconds, so it's like 80 years, and he gets stuck there. And again, for movie purposes, they made it where there was these different color light panels, and that actually represented different days in his life. And he's banging on the one panel, and you go back, and you see the girl saying, "Daddy, I think a ghost is here," and he's next to her, and the book falls off the shelf. Well, it turns out in the end, he was trying to warn his past self never to go on the rocket ship to save the Earth. And so it's that type of, and that's where quantum physics and everything gets involved, and that's where it gets a little far-fetched. But I truly believe if you're a spirit and it's an energy, and energy's light, then time doesn't mean really that much to you anymore. That time, what we believe is time, is an organic thing. We base it on how long it takes us to get to work, how many years, and it's based on our physical existence. That's it.
How do we know that we can actually apply the hypothesis of quantum physics to the paranormal, since we don't know what the paranormal is?
Right, but quantum physics is that. Like, we think that we know the way atoms work.
But wait a minute. Quantum physics has not been able to prove anything. It's a hypothesis. No. So right, how can you take a hypothesis? How can you take a hypothesis and apply it to some other unknown entity?
You can simply say, you know, quantum physics is sort of explaining it by the hypothesis and theories that they're applying, that even though we think that the atoms and there's a structure, well, guess what? You go to smaller molecules or particles, whatever you want to call them, there's chaos and random to it. So what we think, you know, you sort of don't. And I believe that once you get down to that point, quantum physics, one day you can apply it and it'll tell you how there's parallel existences, just do math equations. And basically that's what they all do.
All right. I understand the principle. But here's my argument. Right. We don't know everything yet. Tomorrow, wait a minute, Barry. Please let me finish my thoughts.
Yep.
Tomorrow, something may happen that can prove Einstein wrong. Another discovery could be made by another scientist that would prove Einstein totally wrong. What happens then? Everything that we've had established, or everything we believe, is out the window. We have to start at ground zero again.
Right.
So
and that would prove that the theory I was practicing was wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm believing in Einstein. I mean, that's what I'm basing it on.
Yeah.
That everything's energy.
Right.
So then, yeah. Well, just like, you know, if you come out and one day they come up with a ghost phone and they tell you, it wasn't any electrical frequencies, or wasn't any static charges. Yeah. It was this. You know, so that's why I can't sit with you now and say, let me bring the ghost on right now to show you I'm right. You know, I do know that with these, that I've been in haunted places.
Okay.
And when I use this equipment, unusual stuff happens.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour.
Okay.
Wow, interesting conversation, interesting theory, interesting hypothesis, Exo Nation. Barry Ruggiero is our guest. www.NewJerseyParanormalInvestigations.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Here, we're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and affiliates and terrestrial radio stations all around the world. We'll be back on the other side as we continue our investigation into the world of the paranormal and science of parapsychology here in the X Zone. Don't go away.
Now that ain't working, that's the way you do it. Let me tell you, damn guys ain't dumb. Maybe get a blister on your little finger. Maybe get a blister on your thumb. We got to install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators.
And welcome back. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're talking to Barry Ruggiero in New Jersey, and Barry is the founder of New Jersey Paranormal Investigations, and his website is www.newjerseyparanormalinvestigations.com. Barry, how haunted is New Jersey?
Well, like any state, if you have any historical, we've had the battlefield in Monmouth, the battlefield in Princeton. So you find a lot of your older places are haunted or either have layers of energy. The more history there is, it's like there rings on a tree. Is it just an echo from the past, or are these places haunted? So there's quite a few, but I think no more than any other state, if you really look into it.
Where has been the most haunted place that you and your team have done an investigation?
Publicly, I'm trying to think of which one would be the most haunted, I would say. Probably in New Jersey, it would be the White Hill Mansion for a public investigation. And I had one private investigation up near the Rawway area of New Jersey that was, was quite haunted. And when I say quite haunted, what I mean is activity happened not quick in the sense of within 10 minutes, but activity did happen. And I've been at places that they say are haunted and could stay there a whole night and nothing happened, and come back and the same thing, nothing happens. It's not like you see on TV where within an hour something goes on.
So how long does an average investigation take you and your team?
Actually, it's more of a case file. We'll do a series of investigations because, like anything, if we all knew the answers to this, then we'd be able to say, at 9 o'clock at night, the ghosts come out. And or after midnight and 3 a.m. is the witching hour. So usually what I'll do is we'll conduct a series of, on private cases, you do have families who are not going to leave the house. So you get them downstairs while you're upstairs in the bedrooms or something like that. And you rotate with their schedule. And you'll do a series of investigations. You'll probably end up doing 4 or 5. Sometimes that could be spread out over 3 or 4 months because you don't want a snapshot. What I want is a few, have some data, some hours to be able to analyze this and say, okay, sometimes I can think, oh, that's something. And then a month later and then 2 months later realize, no, that was this mechanical thing or something. It just goes through that analysis, that process of looking at it. So I typically, maybe when I first started, I was trying those, let's do the all-nighter things. But now it's case studies, even with the historic sites we work with, some of them, most of them will do, fundraisers for them. But in return, what I get out of it is our team and I go in there by ourselves and do a case history on them. And we share it with them, whatever they claim that happened, some of the trustees, and we just say over the years, we're going to build a case history. And to me, the best case would be is if I had something for 5 or 6 years and I could say to you, come on your show and say, Rob, over 6 years, I cannot explain these things. And it's at a, 58% ratio that I can't explain them. They still would be, look at the Rhine Institute and with psychics and everything. There's a way of logically explaining a lot of things. But at least at that point, you'd say, gee, over 5 years and all this data to go through, and still you're getting a high, not more than a halfway point percentage that things are going on there.
So with all the work that you've done, are we any closer to understanding the paranormal in a manner that we can prove it to the public and prove it to the skeptics?
You know what? I've gone down the road now to where I personally believe, because hauntings or haunted houses or whatever way you want to explain it are more of a personal thing that people experience. And just like we were talking before about quantum physics and all that, at the end of the day, I look at all this equipment and I tell you I believe in Einstein's theory and all that, and I'm just trying to find a way to quantify and measure these things. But at the end of the day, I know when I've sat in a place and something strange has happened, or I've heard a voice, and there is no way to explain it. So I try to find a reason, and I'm using physics, and I'm looking at other physics and saying, look, how can I measure this stuff? But I think actually we're further away from the truth now because of all the TV shows And, they become more like circus acts, to be honest with you, a lot of them. They bring in equipment that was never meant for investigating. And it's, more about, like, can I get that gotcha moment? And, I think there's in teams and people out there, there are researchers, and then there are people that just want to be on YouTube, and there's nothing wrong with either one as long as you don't hurt anybody. But if you're going to take on personal cases or private families, you should know what you're doing because you can hurt somebody.
You were mentioning before that you do private cases. Now, what's the difference between a private case and a case that you openly do?
All right, so a public case would be like, they could either do fundraisers where people could come ghost hunting with us for a night, or we would make it publicly known at that place, here's our evidence, here's what we found, you look at it for yourself and see what you think, and anytime we go in there, we would post more of it. Private cases, you'll never know the family's name. We'll never divulge anything about it. And we're looking for the end to come to some type of resolution for a private case, like we talked about before. I hate to say it, to me, it's the big difference is you got the weight of someone's called you because they're afraid or they think something strange is going on. And that's a responsibility. That should feel heavy on someone's shoulders. That, if I say to you, yes, your house is haunted, and like you said about, it's still such a gray area with the paranormal that there's no way I could say, look, my theory is the theory. And I have a weight to carry that whatever I say to you at the end of all this investigating, how are you going to handle it? Do you feel you were victimized, like a crime or someone broke into your house? So there's a weight to how I have to tell you, and also a weight to when I take that case on, okay, so I'm taking this responsibility on to tell these people the truth and what I think from my experience and then how I can help them. So that's, to me, the heavy part of it. It's more tight, You're not going to use a spirit box. You're not going to use this. You're not... Strip it down. I want an answer that we can quantify, and then someone can look at it, like I can bring to you and say, Rob, listen to this. And you would say, I can't explain that. Not where, gee, I heard that EVP, but I also heard the furnace go on. It's got to be really tight and concrete at that point. And that's the big thing, I think, with private investigations is because one way or another, whether it's paranormal or not paranormal, I want to bring people to a safe conclusion. And I don't want to mix it up by bringing in stuff that they see on TV necessarily. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. I want to bring something that I could try to measure something with. I don't want to bring a gadget in to entertain me.
So why do you think the paranormal is so popular these days?
I think it was a taboo topic for years. I think up until Ghost Hunters came out, they sort of gave a feasible, like, we can use equipment. You don't have to be a sensitive, a psychic. You can actually go look for ghosts. And I think what their mission was, I believe anyway, what they said on TV, was to bring it out in the open. Now, as well as I do, I'm 60 years old now. If you started talking that you saw ghosts in the 70s, early 80s, I mean, there was, unsolved mysteries on search for whatever, but people really looked at you more like you probably had mental problems. It wasn't a vogue thing then like it is now where it's more acceptable. I mean, there was always those people that did have paranormal experiences, but also there was a lot like, I grew up in where, the family problems stay in the house.
Yeah.
No neighbors can know anything. So if you had a ghost, believe me, my mother, if I ghost, she'd say, listen, you don't tell anybody about this, okay? You go out, you go to school, you come home, you don't tell your uncles, your aunts, nobody. No one needs to know this. They're going to think we're crazy. And that was more or less the mentality, of people. So I think that's why it's more popular. And the fact that people feel you can physically measure it now with instruments and devices. So it's no longer just, I felt something. And it was more of a rare thing than it is now.
Could it also be possible that anybody can do this? that it doesn't cost a lot of money, that it's a
Yes,
way of,
absolutely.
socializing. It's like the old CB clubs of the 60s and 70s. Everybody put a CB in their car. They pulled into the local diner parking lot beside each other and would talk to each other on the CB, like anybody could do it.
And the answer is yes. Then it comes down to how dedicated you are to it. It's like, there's fishermen who will go out and go fishing and catch a sunny. Then there's guys who are in bass tournaments. So, and it's, like a musical instrument. I play guitar, and the biggest thing I'm still chasing is the hours you practice and how good you can get. How many scales do you want to play? How much time you put into it. It's the fruit of the labor. For you on your show, I'm sure it's the same thing. So that's what it comes. If you're getting into it because you watch Ghost Hunters and you say, let's get an IR camera and let's start a YouTube channel, well, that's the level you're going to be on. You want more viewers than anything else.
Yeah, but you're talking about YouTube, and to me, YouTube is nothing else but a receptacle for garbage. Like, there's so much crap on there.
That's more or less what I'm saying to you, is that some groups that do that. That's what they're in for. They watch Ghost Adventurers or whatever. And I'm not saying, hey, look, it's entertainment, but reality TV is not real.
Of course not.
And that's the first thing. So if you're going to base it, and it is part what you said. I mean, I go to some, I've been to a few conventions, and when my brother and I were together, we ran one, and it was like the cool kid lunchroom, but for the geeks.
Yep.
Like everybody had a black shirt on, everybody's sitting in their own little areas. The really tough guys, like why do you go into a haunted house, or if you think you go into a haunted house, why do you have to take a picture of yourself where you're standing in a black T-shirt with your arms folded like you walked into a hijacking? You're walking into a dark house.
Plus, there's a lot of ego when it comes to these teams out there. Like, I'm sorry, they need more mental help than the people that they're going to help.
I don't want to bash any teams. I know a lot of good ones. I know a lot of good people in the paranormal. But yeah, and that for me over the years has become the turnoff. Yeah. And that's why, like, if you go to our Facebook page, I'll post articles and stuff. But this is the first podcast I've done in 10 years. Because I'm just like, I don't need to be popular. I don't need to be known. I'm not looking for attention.
You see, you just hit a bone of contention with me. Number one, we're not a podcast.
Okay.
Like, we're a real radio show. Like, we go on the air. We just don't put these little shows on the internet for people to listen to. And you know what?
Okay.
The YouTube channel is no different than these podcasts that are out there.
Okay.
It's amazing that anybody can find anything anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
All right. Speaking about finding things, I've got to find my next commercial break, which is coming up in 53 seconds. Please stand by. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to know more about Barry, maybe you'd like to contact him. His website is all right, you ready for this, gang? New Jersey Paranormal Investigations.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada.
Places and friendly faces because I had to be free.
Welcome back, everyone. Don't forget, this is Halloween month. And if you'd like to find out more about the X-Zone Radio TV show, visit us at xzoneradiotv.com. And for all the programming we have available for you, 724, 365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. Barry, what are your thoughts about demons, about evil, demonic spirits and such?
So my thoughts are, I think that it's just like a great white shark. You and I both know they exist, but they're very rare if you're ever going to run into one in the water, unless you're in South Africa somewhere. I think TV and Hollywood have made a bigger deal of it. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people calling that say they think they have demons.
Mm-hmm.
Demonology, to me anyway, the way I was raised, is a Catholic belief to be a demonologist. A Roman Catholic belief. I mean, I know the Jewish have the same thing. They have their demons, but it's a religious thing. There could be bad people. Jeffrey Dahmer was a bad person. Was he a demon? Could be, but just could be a bad person. So we go into that whole realm. Now, Dave Juliano and John Zaffis and those are demonologists. That's what they do. That's their belief mechanism. But for me, I've had heavy cases to where I had one or two, to be honest with you. And, it was different. It felt different. It felt more intense, a little bit more powerful. Things did move. So that was different. You felt the heaviness, and you felt it was a very dark type thing. But demons, I do believe I believe in God, so I believe in the devil, so I believe that there could be demons. I just don't believe that people experience them the way that we think they do. I think it was more of a religious tool at one time, and I think Hollywood has done a real good job with it. If you want that, though, and if I say there's something here that I can't explain, and it's really heavy, I'm going to call John Zaffis, or I'm going to call Dave Juliano to handle that. Or ask you to get, a priest or whoever you want in, and they'll see if they want to do an exorcism. At that point, I would turn the case over. But for me personally, I've never run into demonic per se. I've just had a couple of heavy cases that didn't feel right.
So how relevant is a person's own personal belief, and how does their philosophical views impact the paranormal experience that they might think they're having?
I think in a lot of cases it goes, if I had to put a percentage, I would say probably 80%, because people will say demon, and it's that whole, we're all brought up on, good versus evil, God and the devil. And like I jokingly say sometimes, I say, and I'm sure it's happened maybe once to you, Rob, where, whatever happened to Casper? I mean, every call now, it's, I think it's dark. It used to be family members or a haunting, and it's so rare now that people just automatically go to it's something dark. And well, what would bring us to that? Well, if it's not God coming to you, then it has to be the devil, or his demons.
Well,
So
the way I look at it is that religion is a way of controlling people.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
So I don't believe in demons. I don't believe in the devil. I'm the kind of guy who needs to see something in order to believe it. I'm a former cop, a former criminal investigator.
Okay. So would you consider yourself an atheist, or do you consider yourself, you believe in God, but that's about it?
I'm a realist.
Okay. Which to me would put you in the atheist column.
Oh, no. I'm not an atheist. I'm a realist.
Okay.
So to me, when people say, whether it's ghosts, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's UFOs, aliens, whatever, prove it. I don't want theories. I don't want speculation. I don't want hypothesis. I want proof. If you say they're real, I want proof. It's just like when you're in police work, you're doing an investigation. You follow the the trail. You gather the evidence, which is proof, in order to make your case. If you cannot find evidence, you have no case. So when it comes to all the aspects of the paranormal, and I've been doing this show for 31 years now, nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. And people say, well, Rob, why do you do the show? I want to believe. I believe that one day somebody's going to come on this show. My producers are going to find that person who has the answers, who has the proof, but no one else will listen to them. That's why I do this show. Whether it's John Zaffis, who I have my own opinion of these demonologists. I think they're nothing but con artists and carnies. Mm-hmm. People who claim to have been abducted by aliens. People who claim to have seen UFOs that are 3 miles wide, 4 miles high. Who all of a sudden left the ghost hunting experiences and tours and investigations that used to do, because that kind of dried up. Now they're doing UFOs. You know, it seems that the paranormal is a place where people go where they have nowhere else to go. And I'm not talking about you here. I think that you've got a lot of interesting theories there, and you've done a lot of homework. You take it seriously. But there are so many people out there who have soiled the paranormal world for a lot of good people who have great intentions and who want to make a difference, that now I think the realm of the paranormal, including the so-called television shows that are anything but real, are putting the paranormal back where it was 30, 40 years ago. The ratings on these paranormal shows are dropping. UFO sightings are dropping. Paranormal experiences are only found and only kept alive when it comes to the Waverly Institute or the Gettysburg, where a lot of people go because this is where you go. But when it comes to anything fresh, anything new, anything exciting, I'm looking. I do this show 5 nights a week, 4 interviews a night. I'm looking. And still, I can honestly say, nothing's changed.
Okay. I mean, that's your. I understand where you're coming from on that.
Yep.
But then at the same time, just like you said, I follow I was a police officer, I was a detective. I follow the evidence. Well, the same logic would be applied to you followed evidence sometimes, and not saying you personally, but it would lead to the conclusion that someone was guilty. And then the technology came where DNA showed, no, that person was never there.
That's
but
right.
At that time, that evidence was believed to be truth.
But at the time, if the evidence is conclusive, whether the DNA comes out later or not, that person will still be guilty.
Right, but if the person was never guilty and the evidence came to conclude that he was,
no. When you're doing a police investigation, the evidence has to be secure in order to get a conviction.
Right.
You just don't charge. You just don't charge somebody because.
I'm not saying you do, but I'm saying that in cases that people were put in prison by the evidence that you detectives got, prosecutors looked at and said yes, and they argued their case in front of a jury, and then you find out 10 years later, well, DNA turned out that wasn't the guy. But at that time, with the system that you had in place, that evidence was concrete.
Okay. So how can we relate that to the paranormal, investigating the paranormal?
It's a perspective of, what you're saying is, well, I'm looking for this, but there's no proof.
Yeah.
But also where's the proof that it doesn't exist?
Well, that's a very poor argument. It's just like saying
it's not a poor argument.
Well, sure it is. It's just like saying, if you're not in the forest and a tree falls, does it still make a sound? Right?
Does it?
I don't know. I've never had that.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
But the law of physics and the laws that apply to gravity and science say, yes, that tree will make a sound when it falls. But how can we say that with the paranormal?
Well, again, I go back to I have personal
Yeah.
experiences. Now, whether you believe I'm a lonely guy and that I want to experience
No,
things
I'm
for
not saying that at
whatever
all.
reason.
If you have an experience and if you believe it happened, then to you, no matter what anybody says, that experience is real.
Right.
What I'm saying is that I haven't had a paranormal experience. I haven't had a brush with death. I have not had a near-death experience. I have not seen a UFO. I have not seen Bigfoot. I want to believe, but in order for me to believe anything, I need proof.
Okay. I can understand
Yeah.
that. I respect that. But I would also say then why have nothing against you again? Why have a show to where you're bringing on people that believe that just to discredit them?
I'm not discrediting them. What I'm doing is saying, prove it to me. You say you're a paranormal investigator. Prove to me that the paranormal is real. You're making the claim of the paranormal. I'm not. I'm saying I want to believe.
But
Convince
you
me.
also don't start the premise with that. You don't say, look, you're coming on, I want to believe, prove it to me. Because on a radio show, you can't do that. You can't sit there and say, okay, here's a bunch of audio files. Here's some video clips that I have. Here's a case I'm studying. Here's reports from some police departments that said they thought someone broke in and no one was there. So just to have someone on say, tell me a little bit about yourself, and let's have a discussion about the paranormal.
Yeah.
And then say, well, I don't believe you don't have any proof. Well,
No, wait a second.
it's an hour
There's
show.
nothing wrong with that. This is there's no difference that what I have done is I have brought a guest on who sends me the information. Okay?
Yep.
You presented your hypothesis, and all I want is proof. What is wrong with that? Convince me. What is wrong with that?
Because it wasn't presented that way to begin with. That one is an interview, and the other one is show me.
Well, this is an interview.
You could tell me, like as a police detective, I think this is the case, and I'd say, okay, then show me. But if I'm just talking to you in an interview, it's not the same. I'm not asking, bring your evidence. I want to see the case files.
So basically, well, first of all, the hour is up. But basically, what you're saying is that you believe in what you believe, but you do not have the ability to convince me of what you believe is real.
Other than because your way is, well, nothing. It's not. No one's shown me any.
All right.
proof.
Thanks very much for being with us tonight. I want to, here we go. Another guy who's all talk, no action. Comes up with these crazy ideas, and because I challenge him, he gets pissed off. Well, if that's the way it's going to be, don't call yourself a paranormal investigator, because investigators go after facts. They go after evidence. They don't go after ghosts, goblins with these little tiny machines that they think are actually telling them what they want to know. I don't know. That's my opinion. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
But I wish someone had talked to me.